Well, welcome back. Today we're in a beautiful location here in the English countryside, and we're going to be looking at camera settings for panoramic photography. First of all, tripod. A tripod is helpful. It's not essential. You can actually stitch panoramic photographs from handheld pictures these days. The software is very, very good. But I think a tripod is a big help if you're planning on doing a lot of this sort of stuff. Another thing that's quite useful is a little spirit level for the top of your camera. I use one of these whether I'm doing panoramics or not. I think it's a handy little reference to use for making sure your horizontal are nice and straight on the horizon. Okay, regards to camera settings, don't worry, I'm going to put the key facts for these on the video after we've spoken about them, so you can obviously pause the video and write them down. Exposure wise, I'd say set your exposure on manual or aperture priority. You don't want to be changing the aperture on any of the shots, so you need to pick out your aperture. Let's say it's f16 and you shoot on f16 for all the frames. You can change the shutter speed if you want, that's not a problem, and you probably will need to do that depending on how many pictures you shoot and the weather conditions, which I'll go into in a minute. Focusing, always put the focus on manual, not auto, because again you don't want the focus to change as you're moving along the different frames. So that's another manual setting, and colour balance, I would leave that on daylight. In terms of lenses, you can use pretty much what you want, but I would advise you not to shoot on very wide-angle lenses. The reason being, wide-angle lenses tend to get a lot of distortion towards the edges, and that can be a little bit more difficult to stitch in the stitching software. I personally prefer to shoot between 35 and 70mm. I don't like getting any wider than that, but if you want to try it and see how you get on, but my advice would be to stick no wider than 35mm. As for the actual shooting process, you can do panoramics in different ways. I used to shoot quite a lot with the camera set in a horizontal landscape format, and just rotate the lens across and then just shoot, rotate and shoot. That gives you a very wide shot, but also very narrow shot, which is fine for some applications, but you might find it's a little bit too narrow for your liking. So the way around that is just to adjust the camera and just shoot on a vertical axis like so. Now that means you're going to get still, obviously you can still shoot a very wide shot, but you're getting a bit more width on the picture. It does mean, however, you've got to shoot quite a few more frames to get the width you want. But that's the way we're going to shoot today. We're going to give that a go, and I think it just gives you that little bit more flexibility. Another thing we need to consider before we start shooting is to look at the scene and look at the lighting in the scene. We may start off shooting this side of the image, and it could be a rising sunset, sunrise, or the sun setting, and it may well be a lot brighter this side than it is right over here. So you need to do one or two things. You need to take some test exposures right away across the scene and average them out. Or better still, I think, is just to take a few different exposures. So bridge your exposures, do maybe one or two lighter and maybe one darker or two darker, so you've got a selection of exposures, and just do that. And then at least then when you get back to home or your studio, you can make a much better informed decision of the exposure, obviously on the computer, than perhaps you can out in the field. So that's something to consider. Right, we're back in the studio now. I've opened up my images. I've converted them to Adobe DNG format, which, if you viewed my video I did a week or so ago on workflow and archiving, you'll know why I do that. So they're all converted. I haven't really made that much of adjustments to these. It's just a little bit of tonal adjustments, but nothing major. And there's the four that we're going to stitch together. Now, I just want to show you about the overlapping. I mentioned in the video you need to overlap these images, each frame. So as you're shooting each frame, you need to keep an eye here on the edges, and in the next one you need to allow a little bit of overlap, probably about 15 or 20% overlap. And I'll probably best demonstrate on this mock-up here. These are two frames from our shoot. Just go back, and I'm just going to drop down an opacity on this one. So towards the edge of the frame, you'll notice, if I drag this one across, you can see the overlap I allowed on this picture around that much. So that's what you need to be aiming at. You need to be aiming about 15 or 20%, as I said. And what that does, it just enables the software enough overlap to join up the images successfully. Right, we're using Photoshop CS3, and our next job here is to basically stitch these together. So first thing we do is select all the images, go to Tools, go to Photoshop, and we go to Photo Merge. And that brings up the box here. Pretty simple. I just leave mine on auto. I find that gives me the best results for the sort of images I want to do. We're not looking to do anything fancy here, no 360s or anything, just a panoramic. We just want these stitched together. So there's our images loaded, and we just click OK, and we just allow that to work its magic. Okay, so Photoshop has now finished stitching the image, and here it is. It does look like the dog's chewed it, I'll admit, but that's the way these things tend to come out of the Photo Merge software. So we can obviously go in and crop this down, but first of all, let's just take a quick look and see if there's any bits of any problems we need to address on this image. So there's the stitching line. So what I tend to do is turn these off and zoom in, and go along and just check the lines and make sure nothing's out of alignment. And that all looks pretty good on that seam. So we'll go along a bit more to the next one. And that all looks pretty good as well. Just zoom in a bit further. So it's made a very good job of that. And then finally, this one, like so. Well, I was hoping to might be able to sort of go into this and show you how to address any problems, but we've done such a good job with the camera setup, but it seems that it's stitched this perfectly. I can't find any problems with it. So there we go. So it just shows you that a bit of forethought with the camera setup can save you quite a bit of retouching. So, seeing we've done such a good job on the stitching of this, and we don't need to go in and do any retouching, we can now just crop this image down and get rid of all these doggy edges that are causing us to be distracted. So we just crop the image down, get right to the edges, and that'll get rid of all those horrible bits. What I will point out, I shot this on a 16.7 megapixel camera, a 1DS Mark II Canon, and I work in 16-bit, so that's not going to help the file size very much. But I've ended up with a document size of 627 megabytes. So if you're shooting on a high resolution camera like this and you start doing these panoramics, just remember you need a fair bit of RAM in the computer to be able to process these. Otherwise, it's going to come to a grinding halt. So something to bear in mind. I'll let this process and crop down, and we'll come back. So there's the finished cropped image. I may well crop this down a bit further, but that's finished for now. We're going to go in now and just flatten the image. We don't need all these layers because we've got such a perfect stitched document, and that will preserve a bit of disk space and RAM on our system. So there it is. There's the finished kind of raw picture. We still can now go on with this image and do some color correction and do some manipulations on it, but that is the stitched image completed. I'll put up on screen at the end of this video the key facts. I'll also put up a URL, so if you can't be bothered writing all those key facts down, you can download a PDF with them on to save you a little bit of hassle. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me on the next video. Cheers!